Today is Monday, July 26th, and this is Jury Duty, a Big Brother podcast. My name is Kyle Petty, and I am joined with John Dunphy and Gina Morgino, and we're going to going into week 3, starting with Xavier winning HOH. So, how do we feel about that?
I like it. I mean, I like Xavier, so I'm happy to see him do well. I think in our last episode, I was mentioning how I would have, really kind of preferred a girl to get the power in the house this week because we already saw 2 guys win, but I am happy for Frenchie. So, and his HOH week, based on this, the episode that we saw last night, has been very.
I'm sorry. Who are you happy for?
What did I say?
You said you're happy for Frenchie.
But thank goodness for him. Yeah, I'm happy for Frenchie.
I'm happy for Frenchie.
Did I seriously say that right now?
Yes.
No, so you're happy with Xavier? Why?
Happy with Xavier. Originally, I had hoped a girl would get the power this week, but I do think that based on this past episode that we saw last night, his HOH week is already getting very interesting. So interesting is what we like. So I'm happy. Yeah, happy for Xavier, and I'm just interested to see how the rest of the week plays out now.
Yeah, I really want to see Claire win. Claire or Tiffany? I'm rooting more for Claire, mainly because I feel like, Tiffany is super smart. Like, I love everything that Tiffany's doing right now.
Oh my God.
But I just feel like we've seen a lot of Tiffany, so I kind of, not that I can predict what she'll do, because I most certainly think I cannot. But Claire, we haven't seen as much of, so I'm more interested in the Claire HOH. But like, I'm definitely down for a girl. Definitely down.
Yeah.
And
Gina, you were again totally right. I said to Kyle
what
last night.
What can
I say? I was like, Tiffany is making moves. Oh my God.
Tiffany is running this entire house.
Like I said to you guys, my favorite part of your last episode was how many times you said Gina was right, Gina's onto something, maybe we'll listen to Gina. I'm saying.
I know. No, it's our fault. It was our fault. But again, I still say that we didn't know these things. So like, that's not fair. That's not fair.
Yeah.
We weren't watching the feed. That's not fair.
So we saw Tiffany discussing like noms right away with Xavier, right, in this episode.
Yes.
And yeah, that was when I looked at Kyle and was like, wow, Tiffany, she is just running things. Yeah, talking about potential noms. Who did she mention again? So she mentioned Brent, Britni, and Whitney was the other one,
Whitney,
right?
yes.
I think those were the
Whitney
three names those were the 3 names that came up.
Well, sadly, at this point, like, Whitney has to be a part of the conversation because, there's nobody else. Like, Xavier has nobody else that he can put up.
I also loved that, like, we finally started to see what I was saying the other day of, like, Tiffany talking to the camera, her, like, singing, like, Whitney's gonna be next was so funny.
Yes, it was so funny because she's sitting here and she's like, oh, she's a sweet girl. She's a sweet girl. But I know
she's gotta go.
Cut my feet.
And, Whitney was the only one, and not that she, like, surprised me being, like, her name being thrown out. But, I think, and Kyle and I think mentioned it in our last the podcast recording, that Brent and Britni seemed like 2 ideal candidates. So to hear their names was not surprising.
That was one of the moments where I was like, you're right.
Geez, yeah, it's really amazing. But I think, I do feel bad for Britni. I do feel bad for her, but I also understand why she's like being put up and being discussed as a nominee, because in my opinion, I think that in the house she's like done the least of reaching out to other team teams and stuff like that. So like she doesn't really have the same relationships with people, and she's also been on the block now too. So it's another person to put up on the block who's already been there without having to upset someone who hasn't been on the block yet.
That was something that I thought, like, myself. It's like, okay, so if we really need a pawn, then like, why in the world am I going to piss somebody else off and get more blood on my hands and like select a new pawn? You've already been up there, and not for nothing, it worked. Okay, you as a pawn worked. We got out exactly who we wanted to. So
yeah, nobody. I don't think
I'm
anybody
give it
wants
another go.
Right. I don't think anybody wants Britni out. It's just the way that things have fallen these first few weeks. Like, she's just been the most logical pawn to put up there against the target. I do feel a little bad for her, because you could tell she's been stressing about being on the block and hearing her name thrown out there. So
she really does not handle being on the block well at all. It's been like, I do feel for her, but I have also been seeing her a little differently this past week, just because of like some of the things that she's been saying, some of the things that she's been kind of demanding. Like it's interesting to see how she's handling it.
I think she's way out of control.
It's been rough.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I think she's kind of going crazy. And like, I'm not even watching the feeds. I'm just seeing enough from what I'm seeing. And like,
So it was crazy. Like, I'm sure we're going to get into like all the competitions and stuff and like whatever, but on the feeds, it's been kind of frustrating for me to have watched the episode from last night after hearing the way that she's been speaking about the events of the week on the feeds. Because, like, for example, in the Wildcard competition, she all week has been complaining about how, if I only had a chance, like, they were both gunning for me, so I had no opportunity to win. I could have won this competition if they gave me an opportunity, but I had no chance. And then we watch the episode and we see that she stood there for like a couple of minutes with the right card in her hand, staring at the card, like, could have knocked him out at any point and didn't. So that was frustrating. She's also been demanding an apology from Xavier because his nomination speech to her, she's never been spoken to like that in her entire life. She can't believe that he would say something like that to her, when really all we saw was, oh, well, I'm putting you up because you probably put me up. But she's blowing it up into like this whole big thing.
I don't know what she's talking about.
And all week she's been saying, like, begging America for a power, saying that it's not fair, she doesn't deserve this, and what she actually deserves is a couple of weeks of immunity because she's been on the block twice in a row. And there's just
nobody
this weird
deserves immunity.
There's this
for one
weird
reason
entitlement. There's
yes,
weird
and that was
entitlement coming out.
That's something else that she said last night too. Because I took the liberty to rewatch the episode just to make sure that I knew exactly what was going on. And she even said, like, oh, I don't think that X would put me up because that would be a really, really bad game move. Like, a bad game move for who?
Yeah.
Right. She's not necessarily
what is she talking about.
She's not like offering anything to people. There haven't been a ton of conversations where she's telling them this is why it's beneficial to keep me. She's just saying it's not fair to put me up. She's not saying I can further your game X, Y, and Z, Right.
And there's actually no good reason to not put her up because to point, she hasn't won anything. So like what exactly is it that you're going to give me, or what do I think I can even get from you when you have essentially accomplished nothing?
Right.
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah. It's rough to watch.
The way that she's reacting to being, her name being thrown out as a nominee this week is not as surprising to me, just based on last week when she was put on the block. Because, I thought it was. I'm sure it's upsetting for anyone in that house to be put on the block at any time, right? Like, we see all the time in past seasons, like, players as they're getting closer to the game being like, oh, I've never been on the block. I've never been on the block. It's a big thing. So, you don't want to have to go through that stress for the whole week. But, the way that Britni got upset last week after Kyland, really just came out and said, like, the reason I put you up is because I won Frenchie out, and after speaking to everybody in the house, you were the most likely person to save him if you had the opportunity. After seeing, and then she went into this whole thing about how, like, she's never going to be honest with Kyland again, and this and that. I'm like, you're making an enemy when you don't have to. Like nobody wants you out.
And you're never going to be honest again. For what reason? Like,
especially
again, this is the most honest gameplay like we've seen. Like, well, Well, Frenchie was pretty honest too. Frenchie was pretty honest.
Frenchie was too honest.
She thought he was honest.
Yeah, that's true too. Actually, yeah. He probably thought he was being honest with everybody, but like you can't possibly make that many deals with that many people and then still be honest.
I'm sorry. I didn't say the right thing. I meant to say that Kyland was honest. I meant to say that Kyland was honest.
Yes.
That's what I meant to say. I meant to say whatever went on last week, because I thought it was straightforward. Okay, so not what I meant to say. Sorry, totally failed.
We gotta get Frenchie off the brain.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I know, we're Frenchie crazy.
He's all we can talk about for so long that we can't not talk about him.
I know. I don't know what else to say. Like French.
Yeah. I'm confusing Xavier with Frenchie. You're confusing Kyland with Frenchie. You know,
disaster. I'm so embarrassed.
I want to ask you guys something. I want to ask you guys a question about.
Yeah, okay, ask away.
So in this episode, you know, we saw Xavier talking to the different house guests and talking about the people he was thinking about, and I think Azza got wind that Britni was going back on the block, right?
Oh my goodness gracious.
I don't quite understand. Like, listen, I know that they're on the same team, right? They're on the Jokers together, and you might have a bond together, so you want to be sort of protective. But I don't understand this from Azza, like saying, "Just put me up, just put me up."
No.
Why are you volunteering
honestly,
yourself?
I have so many comments on this. But I would really, really love to see if Gina has something to say on this first. Like, is there any other light that you can shed on this outside of the edit? Because
I can actually.
I don't get it.
This one confused me for a while too.
Yeah,
I was watching feeds wondering why she's riding so hard for Britni, because even last week she was too. And I couldn't understand it. But then there was a conversation between her and Derek F, in which she was kind of explaining, like, because if you remember, when we first saw the formation of the cookout, I believe it was Tiffany was saying, like, everybody needs to kind of insulate themselves with somebody else not in the alliance. So, you know, like, we're all looking out for each other, but you also have to, like, align with another person, which is why we saw Derek F and Frenchie, and why we see Kyland and Sarah Beth, and everybody kind of has their one other person.
Yes.
Azza's other person has been Britni. And she was saying to Derek F, if my shield gets taken away, now that puts me at a greater risk, because, you know, what did she say? Hold on. She said, Derek X has 3, they have Claire, we have no one, and I need to take Britni with me because she's going to be loyal to me. So in her mind, losing Britni is going to lose the insulation that she has outside of the cookout, which is going to make her an easier target above the rest of the cookout. So she kind of needs Britni to be her buffer, basically.
Okay. All right.
I mean, that's definitely interesting. I just don't know. I feel like the way she's going to bat for her could end up putting a target on her. You know what I mean? Like,
it kind of is, in a way.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Like, I get you have your person that, you know, supports you, but for Azza, I mean, listen, you can only support someone so long until it starts to hurt you, and then...
Right.
Especially because, like, Britni has been ruffling quite a few feathers given the way that she is reacting to being on the block. So she's kind of tying herself to somebody that is dangerously close to being a loose cannon.
Yeah. Kind of already is, in my opinion.
I don't know what it is with this Jokers team, but it almost feels the same to me as, like, Derek F with Frenchie. Like, to the last...
me, like, the Jokers ain't nothing but a joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know. I was Team Jokers in the beginning, but I think they're really
Derek F has been the biggest disappointment to me for this game. Like I said, I was paying attention to everybody preseason, seeing, like, who I thought was going to land where, and Derek F was in my top 3, and I have never been more disappointed in being wrong ever.
I'm so sorry. I know I really wanted to like Derek F also, because I just felt like obviously there were some similarities to him and I.
He seemed like he was going to have a lot of charisma and set himself up really well with, like, the social aspect of the game.
Right. And, like, all I've really seen is that he doesn't know how to properly cast a vote to evict. He seems to be playing a very messy and disastrous game.
Aligning with all the wrong people, turning on the people that are aligned with him.
He's a nightmare. He's a nightmare. He's a walking disaster. Honestly,
Jeez.
it's a mess. It's a hot mess.
It's rough.
And the only reason why he has not gone up yet is because there's just more important people right now.
Yep.
You know, speaking of which, since we're talking about more important people and people who find themselves to be so important, how can we not have a conversation about some of the things that Brent was saying about his potential nomination? And like, we had to, I had to take some of these notes over here because it was just still so wild. It was wild because I wanted to make sure that I quoted these things properly. You know, just because he's just so cocky, like it's crazy to me. But I'm not physically pawn material, right? Also telling us I'm simply not a pawn. I'm too big of a threat, and it just begs the question of why exactly do you think that? Because you haven't won anything yet. So I don't know why you see yourself as a threat or why you think that others do. Like, and
it's also so frustrating because like one of the very last things that he said in last night's episode was like he was just going on and on about how no, I can't be the pawn, I have to be the target. And it's like he's right, but his reasonings for being that way is like, I'm too good. Like, what do you mean? I'm so perfect at this game. And it's like, what?
Right.
I need you to stop.
It's like the only reason that this is happening is because everybody hates you.
Right.
Not because everybody thinks that you're so fantastic. Right.
He makes all of the women uncomfortable. He has this weird superiority complex that he has not earned.
No, not at all. Oh, the poor dear. The poor dear. I have to say that with this, like, I have to remove his backup bay designation.
About time. I've been waiting for this moment.
No longer backup. I'm still saying Christian is bay. I do see, courtesy of our friends at Big Brother Confessions, that based on their popularity polls, Christian is at the bottom. And that's okay.
He's not widely liked.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what y'all think. I still like him. But I will say that Brent is definitely on the bottom of things as far as I'm concerned. And new backup bay, I'm happy to announce Derek X.
I love Derek X.
Derek X.
I love him.
Okay.
Me too.
New backup bay. New backup bay.
He was my number one preseason. He's very up there now. We love Derek X.
I also really love that you're talking about it preseason. Like, this is sports.
Because we had so much information to go on.
I know. This is so funny to me.
I literally watch Big Brother like people play fantasy football. Like, it's fine. It's fine.
It's fantastic.
Right.
We're here for it.
So I really like Derek X also. I liked him from the beginning, but he's growing on me even more. I feel like he's so smart. He just kind of knows how to talk to people. And it seems like when he figures out like what he needs to do or wants to do, he just finds the best way to do it. And I mean, like you saw him and Hannah, talking together about, kind of conspiring against Brent, the best way to get him out of the house, and making sure, down to the detail of making sure he doesn't play in the wild card. And then, Derek X, coming up with certain strategies to make sure that he doesn't get that safety. And it's interesting to watch that for sure. I like Derek X a lot.
Well, I think it's awesome that you mentioned Hannah because, Hannah was not a preseason fave of mine.
Yeah.
I had no use for this girl whatsoever. But now that she's found her way to Derek X, I'm certainly more interested in her. I think some of their interactions have been super fun. I don't know if they're really going to end up as a showmance or not because I'm not totally sure that Derek X is feeling it. But
I will say, BB Twitter ships it hard.
Yes, no, I'm feeling it. I want it so bad.
They're so cute,
bad.
I think.
Yeah, no. What are they saying on Twitter?
Oh, everybody. It's actually funny because there is another showmance we will be talking about shortly. Mm-hmm. But everyone was like, when you find out that a showmance is official and it's not Derek X and Hannah, and everyone's like all like sad gifs and stuff.
Wait, so what showmance is official?
I hate to say it, but I think we do owe Frenchie a bit of an apology because it is looking like Christian and Alyssa are indeed in a showmance.
Okay,
I will not apologize to Frenchie.
I most certainly did say something about this on the last video, and I was like,
and
I don't know.
It was so funny
was
because
Frenchie onto something like with this whole thing?
I believe it was either the day that you posted the last episode or it was the day before that like a new development had occurred, and I was yelling at the screen like, wait, I have something to say. Because like, so I'm watching feeds, minding my own business, and then one of the cameras changes to the HOH room and we just see a blanket and 2 pairs of legs, and I was like, what's happening? What's going on? And they were just like straight up making out in the HOH room, which Xavier ended up walking in on them, which was very uncomfortable for everyone involved.
Oh, well, I'm sure it was. I mean, did he have anything to say about that?
They are big time showmance.
Okay.
Good.
Wow.
Good.
I will not apologize to Frenchie. I will not apologize to him.
I will say, like, I don't necessarily think that Frenchie was right, but I do think there was a bit of like self-fulfilling prophecy happening where like he kind of pushed them together by being like, no, you're together, which gave them something to kind of bond over and get closer together. So I think by trying to push the narrative that they were a showmance, it kind of ended up making it happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I also feel like even if there was something there that Frenchie saw that we maybe didn't see right away and we thought he was jumping the gun, like even if you think that it might be a potential showmance, like part of me feels like, especially in week 1, like,
chill out.
That's 2 people. How about instead of like blowing up their game and making them angry at you, how about say, hey, I like you guys. You want to work with me? Now you've got 2 more numbers on your side. Like, it's week 1. At some point, you do have to break up those showmances. I get it. But like, it's week 1. You're talking about 2 people that are having lunch together in the kitchen and immediately thinking like, oh, they're never going to go against each other.
Anybody to have connected that way anyway.
Right. Exactly. So even if there is some attraction between them there, I'd rather try to get 2 numbers on my side than immediately start making enemies with people 2 days into the game. Mm-hmm. That's the type of thing that could have fizzled out on its own anyway, for all we know. They might have been a showmance for a week and then decided we don't like each other, and that's over. Who knows? I thought he really jumped the gun with trying to blow up their showmance, which has now blossomed into a real thing.
I mean, listen, I think that's a very interesting take, but I don't know, John. I don't know that I want to team up with the showmance even in week 1, because then you just know from the very beginning that you're nobody's best friend. Like, I don't know that I want to set. I mean,
those 2 people
that way.
Those 2 people. Who's to say that you're?
If they're your final 3, they're absolutely not taking you. Like, unless you're, I don't know. Just make me nervous.
We've seen it happen.
Oh, of course. I am certainly not saying that's your final 3. I'm saying I want to try to get these 2 people in an alliance that I'm also a part of. Something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, you still have your Derek F as your final 2 or whatever, but like, why are you making 2 enemies right off the bat?
Right. I hear that. If I could put them into the same alliance that I was already in, then okay.
That's the only reason. That's the only way I'm talking about it.
I know that I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't want to do a 3.
Yeah. No, I would never. That's not. Yeah. Like, I would never approach. Right. I would never approach a couple and say, let's be a final 3. I just mean it like, if I have an alliance I'm thinking about, here's potentially 2 numbers I could pull in, rather than making 2 enemies literally in the first week of the game and then we see him go home next week.
Right. What do we think about the wild card?
It was great. I loved it. I love this competition so much.
The wild card was fun. We saw Derek X obviously playing for the Aces. We saw Britni playing for the Jokers, and we saw Tiffany playing for the Queens. I don't know. Kind of feel like there's not a lot to say about this. I didn't find it to be overly exciting. Yeah, I thought it was cool that we saw Britni go, and that they were targeting her. Britni is not my favorite, and I most certainly now will not be. I don't like how she's carrying herself. She's totally crazy. I've had enough of her. But I did enjoy seeing her meltdown. I enjoyed the moment with her standing there with the 4 card, and that was very, very fun.
It was such a relatable moment of no math.
It was a relatable moment, as far as math, but also just when you're in the moment with something like that, it's just so nerve wracking. You just know that you can't.
Right, it's so easy for
you can't do it. Yeah.
It's so easy for us and for even the rest of the house guests watching on the TV to be like, Britni, no, right. Britni, move the floor. Britni, please.
No, but I absolutely know that I would have been that way if I was her. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know I would have. Yeah. Yeah, too bad.
It's those pressure situations.
Yeah. So we see Tiffany not using safety. Didn't even do it. My opinion, great decision. Didn't need to. Had absolutely no reason to.
Yeah. And because you potentially risk then whoever the target is gaining safety too if they happen to be the one on that team. They said it was a game of chance, right? That the two other people would be given safety. So, I mean, why risk that? Especially if you know you're good, you know?
Yeah, absolutely no reason to.
It's a very similar situation to what we saw last week where, like, it didn't matter that Sarah Beth needed to win. It just mattered that Frenchie needed to lose.
Right.
So in the same situation as now, like, Tiffany didn't have to win. She just needed to make sure that Brent didn't gain anything.
Right. Since we're talking about Tiffany, you know, because I really feel like we've exhausted the wildcard thing here. My question for you guys, and I thought about this all day long, and I was really, really excited to put this out to you. We're seeing, like, obviously, like, a lot of different people, like, within these alliances kind of have, like, their final twos and, like, their things like that. And what let me bring up this picture because it's just really, really fun to talk about it, like, while we have this up. Obviously, we have these little offshoots, like with Chrysalis. What else do we have? This Kyra with Kyland and Sarah Beth. All these things are really, really fun. Oh, you know what? Before I even get into my question, Gina, can we get into what is this? So next to the Kingslayers, we've got this little note. And you know, this graphic, thank you to Big Brother Junkie for giving us this. All right, because we love using these graphics. We've got this note here that Derek X and Asa have each other's back? Question mark? Like what? Like what is that? What does that mean? Should we be concerned? I mean, like, do they have a name? Like, what exactly, like, is this?
I have seen that they do have a bit of a final two type deal together, but I haven't seen a lot of them necessarily working together. It's just kind of a thing of like, listen, I got you, you got me, but it's not like they're plotting anything together or doing any like hardcore gaming. It's just like, we don't put each other up, we're fine.
Okay, so we're not really seeing like anything like official there.
Right.
Okay, all right, so fun. But so that also then suggests then that we are seeing a little bit something official from Chrysalis. Oh, well, we know that now because now we know that they were underneath the sheets. But now, I do want to ask you. I do want to ask you about Tiffany. Okay. With this Jackpot Alliance. Yeah, I want to ask about Tiffany because that actually brings us into my next little discussion point. I really want to discuss Tiffany because we're seeing a lot of these team members, obviously, like going off into their own little side little things, like this, you know, again, like Chrysalis and Kyra and like whatever. What I feel like I have not seen is Tiffany going into some of those things, aside from what that graphic showed us, and aside from that little fun moment that she had with Asa. So I'm wondering, like, is Tiffany like properly setting herself up like for the future? Like, what is she doing? So we're highlighting the fact that she's in the Royal Flush and she's in the cookout, but like, what are Tiffany's next steps?
Well,
I'm concerned.
I will say for one, Kingslayers and Jackpot, while it may be like new news to people that are only watching the episodes, they have been alliances that were made, I believe, week 1. So we've been seeing a lot of like them working together behind the scenes for the entire game. If you really like look into that graphic, you'll see Tiffany is in pretty much every single one of those alliances.
Yeah, no, we made mention of that the last time.
And I know even last time you were talking about how like she's been connecting with people with like braiding their hair and having like heart-to-heart conversations and things like that. She's doing a really, really great job of setting herself up in a position where socially everybody in the house loves her. Like no one is really looking to target her. I haven't heard her name in anybody's mouth, which is crazy because to me, she's very much spearheading a lot of the stuff that's going on, like pulling a lot of strings behind the scenes.
I'm getting a little nervous. I said that to my roommate tonight because I said, you know what? Like they better get her out. I said, she's going to win.
No one's looking at her, and it's baffling to me because even like a lot of the moves that we're seeing people making of like who people want to target and, you know, even like the one-on-ones that we were seeing with Kyland of like Sarah Beth going in and being like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. It was a lot of Tiffany planting seeds to get people to do her dirty work for her. But a lot of it is her idea being like, oh, you should talk to Kyland about this. You should talk to Xavier about that. But it's all Tiffany.
It's all Tiffany. Yeah, she is really running this thing.
And like even socially, she's set up so well with people because she has a very maternal relationship with a lot of people in the house. You know, she is the oldest member of the house. I know specifically with Derek X, they have a very like mother-son type relationship going on. And it's causing a lot of people to like really put their trust in her in that sense. And no one is looking to target her.
I think that's very interesting. What I also think is interesting is the fact that you had knowledge of this jackpot thing and this Kingslayers alliance, and yet it was Big Brother Junkie that really brought that to us. So like, I don't understand like why you haven't told us.
It just in what we were
some of these things.
The banner.
Like I don't understand. Like why was this a secret?
It just
like,
never came up. I wasn't keeping information. Like one day I'll use
it never
this.
came
It
up.
never
I mean,
came
like
up.
that's why. That's part of why you're here. You were supposed to bring it up.
Have they mentioned the Kingslayers or the jackpot at all in the edits? Like the episodes
edits?
themselves?
No, that's why I never talked about it.
No mention at all, right?
No.
And like the radicals. What is this?
That is a very new thing that I believe. It almost looks like remnants of Slaughterhouse, but I also feel like that's a bit of a fake alliance too. Because I haven't heard a lot of talk about that. I've only really heard Brent talk about it.
Right, and that's why we were super like nervous last week as we're going down like all these different things. We're like, what are all these things? Like, what can Xavier do? I don't really understand like what his next play is, because like literally, according to this graphic, like everyone's safe.
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
Everyone is connected. Everyone is connected, except like we said, it seems like Brent was the only one that thought the Slaughterhouse was really still a thing, and Britni does. Yeah, and Britni doesn't appear in many of these groups, so we didn't think that that was like our logical conclusion that those two would probably be the nominees, and if not one of them, maybe Whitney, but. I think that's how we sort of figured it out, because when you look at that graphic, I mean, everybody is just so connected. And we mentioned Tiffany being in a lot of those groups. I think we mentioned Derek F in our last recording was in a lot of the groups. But then like without even realizing it, all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, Xavier is in every one of these too.
Yeah,
he sure is.
Except for the all girl alliances, Xavier is in all those groups.
To my understanding, Xavier really did not want to win this HOH. Like
from what I've seen, you kind of see that in his face.
From what I've seen, he was looking to drop out. Like all he was waiting for was for Derek X and Hannah to drop out, and then he was going to drop out too. It just so happened that Alyssa and Sarah Beth happened to also get that question wrong. So by default, he was the HOH. But as soon as DX and Hannah were out, he was going to be out too. He didn't want it. I mean, in a sense, his job was made kind of easy because pretty much the entire house is like, no, we want to get rid of Brent. So he was like, all right. So he's not totally getting a lot of blood on his hands. He's just really pissing off Britni.
Right.
Yeah, and she's not even the target. She's like more angry at him than anyone else.
And that's what gets me is like Britni knows for a fact, and last week too, that she is a pawn. So the fact that she's getting so worked up, it's one thing that like, yeah, sometimes pawns go home. So I really need to make sure that I'm like setting myself up to stay here. But to get as worked up about it as she is, knowing that she's not the target, it's just very confusing to me.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I understand why she's so worked up. Like, I do get it. Like, because in the off chance that like, well, it's not really an off chance. If Brent does take himself off or somebody decides to take Brent off, okay, because we don't know if there's somebody else on Brent's side.
Right.
Well, unless you do, Gina. But like from what we've seen from like the edit, we don't know if there's somebody else on Brent's side. So like Britni, I mean, there's always a reason for concern when you're on the block. So I do get some of it like to an extent, but I definitely think she's carrying on like far more than she needs to.
Yeah.
Because she's got to know that she's not like the largest like target here.
Well, and she's sorry, Gina. Sorry.
No,
I was going to say, Britni, she's a fan of this game, right? If I remember correctly, like, yeah, she came into the game as a fan, and we've seen people. How many times was like Christy a few years ago on the block? You know, you hear about people that were on the block 5, 6, 7 times, sometimes that many weeks in a row, and then just to hear that, like, she's kind of asking like, oh, like I've been on the block twice. That means I deserve 2 weeks of immunity. It was like, there have been people that have been on that block, spent half the season on the block. You know, it's just bizarre. I don't know.
I also don't really think that you get to sit here and say what you deserve to do. Like, you shouldn't be on the block. I was on it last week. I shouldn't be on it again. Like, that's not like what this is. It's a game. Like, you could be on it all week. I mean, look, somebody like Dan.
Yeah.
And if you really think that you don't deserve to be there, you have to make sure that you're setting yourself up to not be there. You have to be the one to make the moves and make the deals and make sure that you don't end up there. Because even when she was on the block last week, she spent most of it, again, I'm sorry to say it, whining about how she didn't deserve to be there, rather than going up to everyone in the house and saying, hey, don't get rid of me. Here's what I can offer you.
Yeah.
Right, because she can't offer anybody anything, because she doesn't do anything, because she hasn't won anything. So, no, she can't do that, which is really what the issue is.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh, Britni.
But we're playing Veto in a couple of days. Well, actually, I'm sure we won't. Veto's already been played, but
Veto has been played. The ceremony has happened.
Oh my god!
I definitely don't want to see these nominations change, because honestly, like Brent or Britni, I really couldn't care less who goes home. I don't like either of them anymore. I don't like either of them.
Yeah.
They can both go. We can make this a double.
Lauren texted me the same that he was like, this could be a double. It's fine. Just send them both. It'll be great.
Just send them both home. Like, I'm tired of both of them. Sorry, so tired.
But
so tired.
You know what? If the the third nominee, like the name that was being thrown out there, Whitney, if that is the case and somebody does come up and she goes up, I wouldn't mind if she went home either. Honestly,
she doesn't really offer, Kyle, I'm so sorry. She offers nothing to this game right now.
Listen, I'm not saying she offers a whole lot of anything, but like that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm ready for her to go. Like, I don't want her to go anywhere. Like, she's fine.
Listen,
she's not really ruffling any feathers. I don't see any reason why she needs to leave. But I get it. She's also not really like doing anything for us. So fine.
No, and that's really what I mean. It's not like
I just don't get like the gunning for her. Like, people saying like, "Oh, I want Whitney out." Like, I don't really understand that. Like, she didn't do anything to anybody. Like, even Tiffany says she's a sweet girl.
Up until this week, I think that she was kind of seen as a duo with Brent because she wasn't really vocal about how he also makes her uncomfortable. She's not a huge fan. So even like to me, as somebody who was watching the feeds, I thought that they were more of a duo up until like this past episode. So I think that people are threatened by her because they see her as aligned with him.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
And I'm not necessarily calling for Whitney to go home. Like, I want her out right now. I just mean that if one of these two, Brent or Britni, comes off, I wouldn't be upset to see her go up and potentially go home. That's all I'm saying. I'd rather see her go out than one of these other players, like a Kyland or something like that, go up and Whitney, as far as these other players that are in the house, potential options, is not, to me, doesn't upset me at all.
I'm interested to hear what your guys' opinions are on the fact that Xavier painted it to Brent like he was putting him up on the block as a pawn to get rid of Britni, and pretty much the entire house is making it seem like he's not the target and trying to convince him that he's not the target.
Right.
I love it.
I think that's the right move. Like, if you can keep him kind of calm and feeling comfortable, I think that's definitely the way to go. Rather than trying to, rather than him getting upset and being all fired up for a potential veto, comp and all that stuff. But I am curious because in the episode last night, when we were seeing Xavier just even bring the idea up to Brent, right, of being up as the pawn. Brent was like, if I'm up, I'm not the pawn, I'm the target. If I'm not, so like, I'm curious, as you're asking, like the whole house is making Brent feel like that. Is he buying it, like that he is the pawn and Britney's the target, or is he skeptical of that, or?
No, because there's like a piece of both, because I think his arrogance won't allow him to believe that he's not strong. Like, in his mind, if he is the pawn, it means that he's a weak player. So he can't be the pawn because he's too good a player. He's a strong player. He's a threat. Like, I am great at this game. If I'm up, it has to be because I'm the target. But there's also a piece that, like, everybody in the house is trying so hard to convince him, like, no, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine, that he's like, oh, everyone loves me. I have the numbers. I'm not going anywhere. So there is a piece of him that believes that he's in trouble, but another piece of him that believes that he's set up so well and everybody likes him so much that he's not in any danger of going.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
Right. I like that. Yes. I also think it's a good idea to kind of I think it's a good idea for Brent to think that he's not the target, because it also allows, in case he takes himself off or comes off like for any reason, then like maybe that'll be easier to soothe that. And if Britni should take herself off, you can always just tell her, well, it was a better decision for my game to put you up as a pawn because you've already been up as a pawn. So that way I didn't have to get extra blood on my hands. And because I do still think Britni is kind of smart and she does sort of get things, I think that once the dust settled and like she could calm down and not like be so crazy, she'd be like, you know what, okay, I do sort of get that. Like, I get that. So like, maybe she'll let it go. No, I think that's absolutely the right decision, like, for Xavier.
I'm actually curious. I'd like to ask you too, Gina, about this. So since we're talking about Brent and the whole house trying to convince him that he's the pawn and not the target, has Britni been filled in on that? Like, does she know? Has she been assured? Like, we're telling you you're the target, and we want Brent to think that he's the pawn, but really, it's the other way around. You know, like, does she know, or is she just thinking, "I'm going home in a few days"? Like,
it's funny that you brought that up, because when we were talking about how she's freaking out, I was thinking in my head, like, well, is there a possibility that she's freaking out because she thinks that she's in trouble? But we saw that, like, this whole conversation about what the plan was and having to put up a pawn was had between Xavier and Azah, and I don't see a world in which, when they're so tight together, that Azah wouldn't turn to Britni and be like, "Hey, listen, this is what's going on." Like, I'm pretty confident that Brent at this point is the only one who doesn't know that he's the target.
Okay, all right, good. Because I know during the nomination ceremony in Xavier's speech, he did tell Britni that she was the target, right?
Right, which was just to throw Brent off course.
Just to throw him off. So
we also
as far
even
as we
saw,
know,
like, as the voiceover was happening for like what we're going to see next episode, there was a moment where you saw like Xavier kneeling down with Britni and trying to have a conversation with her, but we didn't get the audio because it was in like the tail end of the episode. So I do think that at this point she's been filled in.
Okay, I'm so impressed with this house. This cast,
it's a great cast. It's so good. Normally by this point, I'm like, these are the people that I'm rooting for and these are the people that I want out. But it's so hard to be rooting for anybody because everyone is so strong this year.
Yeah. Except, can we just go back to Azah?
Sure.
Can we go back to Azah? I'm having a hard time with this. Like, I don't get this whole, like, put me up instead. I'll go home. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't care how upset you are on somebody else's behalf. The fact that you are now saying that you would go home simply because you don't want somebody else on the block, like, that is, like, way too much. And I don't want to take this a step too far, but it's almost like, if you don't have that strong of a will to be here, then maybe you shouldn't be. Like, I don't know. Like, that's a major, major turnoff to me. Anyone who, like, actually gets into the Big Brother house and then wants to throw their game away for any reason, like, I don't know. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Like, what are you talking about? For this girl you met 3 weeks ago, literally 3 weeks ago. Like,
and that's totally why it took me so long to understand why she was writing so hard for Britni too, because in my mind, like, it's one thing to say, like, no, I need to keep her here, I need to do whatever it takes to get here, but to offer to send yourself home over somebody else that you're aligned with, like, it's reached a point where it's gone too far at this point.
It's far
like, you
too
can
far.
want to keep Britni here to protect your game, but as soon as you're saying, I'll go home instead of you,
no, too much. Then maybe you shouldn't be here at all. You know what? Put Azah up and let's see what's good. Let's see what's really going on. You want to be up there so bad? Go on. Except that doesn't really help Xavier's game. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Oh, he never would. Yeah. And we saw him say, you know, like, I'm never going to put up anybody from the cookout.
Right. And of course he's not, man. He doesn't really need that.
It does make you think, though, like, after all that, like, could you imagine if Brent did somehow win and take himself down, and Xavier was like, all right, you said you wanted to go up, so you want to go up so bad?
You want to go up so bad? Honestly, that's what she would do. Except for the fact that, like, if Brent takes himself off and you put Azah up, that's actually not what she said. What she said is...
No, of course. Of course.
He'd get himself into a lot of trouble.
Exactly.
No, of course.
Not
But
what she said.
it would be wild. It would be wild. I know it's not the same what she was saying.
I would love to see it.
TV
I
for
would
us.
love
It'd
to
be
see it, but
terrible
I
for
acknowledge
Xavier.
that it's not right.
Yeah.
It is not right. That is not the way to go. That's so fun.
You want to protect your girl so bad? How about you go sit next to her?
Yeah, you can sit next to her.
It'd be great for Feed's drama, but Xavier would be in trouble.
Well, I mean, you said you wanted to go home over her.
Yeah.
This is your chance. Go ahead. Sink your game. Sink your game.
Tell everyone to vote for you.
You love her so much. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of Jury Duty, a Big Brother podcast. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe, share with your friends, and follow us on all the socials at BB Jury Duty. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure you follow us at the end of the week when we review the veto ceremony, the live eviction, and the HOH competition. Thanks, guys.